Hello there, and welcome to Talking Nerdy, the show where we take various story arcs and events from comics and we cover them. I'm your host, Obi-Wan Jabroni. Our story today is Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters Chapter 1, and we'll be continuing right where we left off just a few weeks ago with our Preludes chapter video. This chapter consists of 6 issues across all of the Star Wars titles. With that, let's start talking nerdy. Starting off, we have Bounty Hunters number 13, written by Ethan Sacks, with art by Paolo Vanelli and colors by R.F. Prianto. Chapter 1, Part 1, Showdown on the Smuggler's Moon. Jabba the Hutt has put a bounty on Boba Fett's head. Valance and Dengar have formed a shaky alliance in order to find Fett first. Valance is desperate to save his old friend Han Solo, but the odds are against them. Every hunter in the galaxy will want a piece of Boba Fett, and Dengar may have an agenda of his own. Now, we open up on Nar Shadar's arms market, and Valance and Dengar are looking for an arms dealer's source that Dengar knows. And Valance is pissed that they missed Boba Fett earlier on the planet. And they spot the source, and Dengar tells Valance to be easy, that the source is paranoid and needs delicacy and tact to get info they need. And Valance runs up and punches the source right in the face, saying that sounds like a waste of time, and this is enough incentive for him to talk. And the source gets pissed as he stands back up and tells his nearby goons to kill them both. And they easily take down all of these goons. They're nobody, just street thugs. And they start running after the source, who's running away into an alleyway nearby. And at this point, we switch over to another part of the market, Orabu Square. And we see Chewie and 3PO are sitting there and they're talking to someone that the Wookiee friend of Chewie, Sagwa, told them they'd be able to help. And they're sitting there talking, and we see the arms dealer's source comes running out of the alleyway behind them and knocking into Chewie and 3PO, and they're followed closely by Valance and Dengar. And Chewie instantly recognizes the two and starts attacking Valance. At this point, we switch yet again to the Fortress of the Mourner's Wail on Dothorian. And we see 2 humans named Tonga and Lasha. And they've landed to find they've landed and they find the place on fire, and there's corpses everywhere. And we learn that they're here to get the help of this crime syndicate to stop the crime war that is starting to kick off. And Tonga starts walking through the fortress, finding nothing but death and destruction every corner that she takes, every room she goes into. When she's been over and looking at one of the corpses, someone points a blaster at her and says, "You shouldn't have come here." And we don't get to see who it is yet. Instead, we go back to Orabu Square. Chewie is beating both Valance and Dengar's ass completely. And Valance is trying to calm him down, saying that he owed Han and will be helping him save him without Chewie's blessing. And that he wasn't trying to kill him that time, the last time they had seen each other. Chewie stops and tells him that he may need his help soon. But till then, stay the way or he will rip his arms off. And he and C-3PO leave. Later on, Valance and Dengar have caught up to their source, and Valance is hanging him by his foot over the edge of a roof. And the source tells them that Crimson Dawn has returned, and that they have stole Han from Boba Fett. And that Jabba thinks that Boba cheated him, so he put a bounty out on his head. But before they can get any more information out of him, something flies through the air, decapitating the source. And Valance takes a blaster shot to the shoulder all at the same time. They run off and they take cover behind a nearby wall, ending the first issue. Taking us into Bounty Hunters number 14, again written by Ethan Sacks, with arts by Paolo Vanelli and colors by R.F. Prianto. Chapter 1, Part 2, The Following. Jabba the Hutt has put a bounty on Boba Fett's head. Valance and Dengar have formed a shaky alliance in order to find Fett first. Valance is desperate to save his old friend Han Solo, and Dengar has an agenda of his own. Dengar's contract revealed that Han is in the hands of the Resurgence Crimson Dawn. At the fortress of the Mourner's Wail, Tonga and her wife Lasha found the Syndicate decimated and under assault by Crimson Dawn warriors. On Nar Shaddaa, a terrifying assassin wounded Valance and killed the hunters, only lead to finding Crimson Dawn and Han Solo. Now, we open in the alleys of Nar Shaddaa, and Valance and Dengar have escaped the assassin, and Valance says they need to get to the ship and go find Fett now. Dengar tells him no, they need to patch Valance up first, and he knows a mechanic that he used to race for that's nearby. And they go there, and they are met by the mechanic named Mama Stamach. And we learn that Dengar owes her a gambling debt, and she lets them into her shop anyway. Now, we switch back to the Mourner's Wail Fortress. Tonga and the few surviving members of Mourner's Wail Syndicate are attacked by Crimson Dawn, and it's not going well. And Tonga takes cover and lets out a huge, loud whistle. And moments later, out of nowhere, comes her and her wife's pet Nexu. Now, Nexus are the cat-like creatures from Star Wars Episode 2 when they're in the Genoshan arena. Now, anyway, it starts rapidly taking down the startled Crimson Dawn soldiers. And Tonga goes over to the leader of the Mourner's Wail, and he tells her that Crimson Dawn showed up and told them to join or die. Back at the garage on Nar Shaddaa, Dengar calls Bib Fortuna and asks to speak with someone named Manaru. And Bib tells him no. At this point, we learn that Dengar is hunting Fett for Jabba because they have this woman named Manaru, and they will free her in exchange for Fett. And Dengar gets pissed, and he throws his comms unit across the room. And Mama Stamach approaches him and tells him that she's stabilized Valance, but he's dying from the strain the cybernetics put onto his heart. And Dengar tells her that he don't care, and he asks her who Crimson Dawn is. And she gets terrified instantly and asks why he mentioned that name. And he asks her why she's so scared. Now, I'm going to read this from the book for you for her response. Want to be my age? You better learn when to be scared. You were just a pup back then. During the Clone Wars, a shadow collective emerged, uniting much of the underworld. Imagine getting Black Sun, the Pikes, and the Mandalorian Death Watch to work together without killing one another. Someone did. Then again, there was never really a choice. Among the syndicates that were convinced was a band of marauders and thieves called the Crimson Dawn. Then suddenly it all came crashing down. After the siege of Mandalore and the rise of the Empire, the collective crumbled, gone as quickly as they appeared. Many of those syndicates went underground. But the truly ambitious will not stay hidden for long. Crimson Dawn returned, deadlier than before. Cold-blooded murderers like Dryden Voss wreaked havoc across the Outer Rim. At least until someone killed him in cold blood. Then years after, the Crimson Dawn just disappeared again. Some say the Dawn never truly left, lying in wait for something big. Now, at this point, Valance has walked in behind him, and he had heard most of this story as well. And he says it all sounds like a fairy tale, but the robed assassin was real, and he shows them a picture of the assassin that he took with his cybernetic eye. And Mama freaks out and says that they are all dead now, that the assassin's name is Deathstick. Moments later, the garage door blows up, and the assassin Deathstick walks in with an army of probe droids at her side. We switch back to the fortress at this point. We see Tonga and Lasha tell the leader that he has a granddaughter he didn't know about, and that his son had a kid with the daughter of the Unbroken Clan's leader. And they killed both of them and tried to kill the child, but she was smuggled out to safety. He tells them both that this is the true heir to both of these clans, and the child could unite them, and that they need to keep her safe and hidden from Crimson Dawn, and he offers to pay them to do so. Now, we switch back to the garage again. Deathstick and her probe droids are tearing through Mama's men, no problem. And Dengar and Valance are hiding behind a nearby speeder, and they decide to throw a thermal detonator at the wall behind them. And they hop in the speeder and they drive it through the hole, out into the streets behind, followed by a swarm of droids. And they try to shake the droids, but they can't, and one of their stabilizers gets shot out. Valance tells Dengar to aim the speeder at the upcoming building, and they jump out just before the speeder goes crashing into the wall and blows up. They land and use the smoke to cover and run and hide in the shadows as the droids leave, thinking that they died in the explosion. But on a nearby rooftop, we see Deathstick watching them slink away, and she's on the holocomms asking why she can't just kill them. She is told that she needs patience and to keep hurting them. And that ends our issue. Next up, we have War of the Bounty Hunters #1, written by Charles Soule, with art by Luke Ross, and colors by Niraj Menon. Chapter 1, Part 3, Most Wanted. Boba Fett claims the bounty of notorious smuggler and rebel officer Han Solo, but Solo was stolen from Fett on Nar Shaddaa. Who would dare steal from the galaxy's most dangerous bounty hunter? The single act may change the galaxy forever. We open in deep space on the ship the Vermilion, and a lady named Margot Trinia has boarded the ship with the frozen Han Solo in tow. And she tells a hooded woman that Han was stabilized before they took him. And the hooded lady says good and tells her to send out the invitations, and also says Boba Fett is welcome to try to come and get him back. At this point, we switch to a cantina on Nar Shaddaa. Boba Fett is looking for info with the barkeep about who stole Han from him, and he's cleaned his armor up, he's no longer blacked out, and he looks like himself again. And behind him, sitting at a table, are two bounty hunters. They see him and look at their data pad, noticing that Boba has a bounty on his head. And Boba sees a reflection of one of these bounty hunters approaching him from behind with a blaster drawn. Boba quickly turns and blasts the hunter in the chest and leaves, making his way to the ship. And as he approaches, there's an explosion that sends him flying backwards. And he starts to stand, and behind him someone says to stay down. We have some questions. And he turns to see Zuckuss pointing a blaster at his head. Boba, who's still kneeling, immediately shoots his jetpack rocket at Zuckuss, barely missing as Zuckuss dives to the ground. And Boba pulls out his pistols and tells Zuckuss that that he should have seen that coming. And Zuckuss just smiles, saying that he did. And behind Boba, 4LOM says hello and has his blaster pointed at Boba as well. Boba turns and sees them both, and he holsters his pistols as they tell him to give them Solo and he can live. Boba says that he don't have to have Solo, and that they tried to blow up his ship, and not only that, but they boarded it, and that's disrespectful to his dad. And he hits a button on his gauntlet. The cannons on the ship move and shoot the ground between them, and Boba activates his jetpack. As the smoke clears, he lands and sees Zuckuss begging for his life and hanging from the edge of the landing pad. Boba tells him that he's not interested and kicks him in the face, sending him falling down into the city below. At that point, he goes over to 4LOM again, and he rips his head off and takes it to the ship, saying that he will give them answers now. Boba hooks him up to the ship, and he learns that the bounty is out on his head, and that Jabba is the one to set the bounty. And we switch to Jabba's palace, and Boba approaches the gate, still carrying four LOM, sorry, his head, and he just tosses it into the ditch next to Jabba's palace as he walks up. And at the gates, he is met by Bib Fortuna and two Gamorrean guards. Boba quickly kills both guards and points the blaster at Bib's head, asking why there was a bounty on his head. Bib tells them that he was taking too long, and they heard that he had sold Han to someone else. Boba's pissed. He says that Solo was stolen, and that Bib needs to take him to Jabba right now. And we learn that Jabba isn't even at the castle at all. At this point, we switch to somewhere out in hyperspace on Jabba's war barge, and he's in a meeting with four other Hutts, and they're discussing the invitation that they received claiming to have Solo for sale. And Jabba says that they either must approach this to negotiate, retaliate, or exterminate them to get Solo back any means necessary. And we switch back to Jabba's palace now, and Bib shows Boba the invitation that they received. Now I'm going to read it straight for you. It's a hollow invitation. And we see the hooded lady from earlier standing with Solo frozen in carbonite. You, Jabba, most exalted of all Hutts, are invited to be present alongside representatives of the greatest galactic powers to witness the return of Crimson Dawn. We do not wish to antagonize, or cause friction, or upset existing arrangements. We wish only to engage with galactic society and do business to prosper. You will find we can be a very useful organization, able to achieve and obtain things no one else can. Such as this particular prize, Captain Han Solo, which we offer to you as a gesture of goodwill. We have extended similar invitations to your council, Jabba. We look forward to welcoming you to our celebration on Jakara. Until then, await the dawn. Sorry, my page fell. And at this point, we switch back to the Vermilion, and we see Margot standing with the hooded lady who's with Solo. And she asks why Solo's so important. And she gives a speech that I'm going to read out for you again. She says, for this to work, we needed something that would get the attention of the entire galaxy. For better or worse, I believe that is Han Solo. Somehow this man, just a smuggler with a terrible reputation, is directly connected to almost every powerful faction in the galaxy. The Rebel Alliance, the Empire, and everyone caught in between. They all love him, hate him, need him, owe him, or are owed by him. Han Solo unites the galaxy. And that right now is exactly what I need. Han always wanted to save me. Now he'll get his chance. And she turns and takes off her hood to reveal that she is Kira. Now, Kira is Han's first ever love in life. They grew up together on Corellia as slaves, scum, and street urchins, and they escaped. And last we seen her was in Solo, where she killed Dryden Voss, talked to Darth Maul, and flew up, presumably now in control of Crimson Dawn, before they disappeared yet again. And that ends this issue. Leading us into Star Wars number 14, written by Charles Soule, with arts by Raymond Rosanos, and colors by Rochelle Rosenberg. Chapter 1, Part 4, Save Solo. Luke Skywalker, Chewbacca, and C-3PO return to the Rebel fleet after failing to locate Boba Fett on Nar Shaddaa. But there is still hope to save their friend Han Solo. Word has at last reached Princess Leia about where Fett and Solo can be found. Now, we open up on the Millennium Falcon that's in the Rebel fleet at the moment. And Luke, Chewie, Leia, and C-3PO are talking about the message that they had received about Han. And Luke tells Leia that they came up empty on Nar Shaddaa, and she says that's okay. The message came from a trusted source, Amelin Holdo, and that Crimson Dawn is back, and they have Han. And Leia tells Chewie to go get Lando, that they may need his help with this. And at that point, we switch to elsewhere on the Rebel frigate at the hangar deck. And Lando agrees to help get Han back. And when Chewie leaves, Lando gets on Cobbs with Bib Fortuna and tells him that he will have a Rebel droid for Jabba and will leave it in orbit at the Crimson Dawn party. And we switch back to the Falcon. Now, Lando and Lobot have joined Chewie, Leia, and C-3PO, and Luke is flying his X-Wing. And Lando warns them that Crimson Dawn is very dangerous, and they need to be careful with them. They're flying through, and they arrive at the planet, and they see numerous fleets of ships in orbit from various crime syndicates and cartels. And Lando says that him and Lobot are going to go back and check the gun arrays to make sure it's safe. They may need them. And they go back to the back of the ship where they have hid the rebel droid that they stole. And this is the same droid that messed with Lobot's implants just a previous story arc or two ago. And they put him in the airlock and they launch him out into space. But when they do, Lobot says the droid is interfacing with his implants again, and they need to get it back before they shut him down completely. Lando rushes back to the cockpit, trying to think of an excuse to get Chewie to turn around. And he reaches the cockpit right as a ship drops out of hyperspace right in front of him. And Chewie swerves and scrapes down the side of the newly arrived Black Sun vessel. And Black Sun's pissed that they're fucking with his ship. And they release a slew of fighters that start going and attacking the Falcon. Chewie takes off heading towards the planet and does a nosedive into the atmosphere. And they drop into a canyon on the surface, losing Black Sun, but crashing into a snowdrift. And they get out of the ship, and they see the Crimson Dawn ship, the Vermilion, not too far away, parked, and they start making their way there, ending our issue. That takes us to Darth Vader number 13, written by Greg Pak, with arts by Rafael Encino and colors by Jason Keith. Chapter 1, Part 5, Sound of Metal. Darth Vader is restored. After Exegol, Vader begins to comprehend the full scope and might of the Emperor's power. He must kneel before his master once more. But Vader's son is a threat to his position. Luke Skywalker must die. Now, Darth Vader and Ochi travel to Boku the Hutt's lair to pick up Luke's trail, a trail that begins by finding Han Solo. And we open in Boku's lair, and after killing numerous Gamorrean guards, Vader now has Boku's full attention. And Boku tells Vader that Fett has lost Han, and Jabba is looking for them both. And that he has been tracking the bounty hunters that have been hunting Fett, and they all have went to his last location except for one group. And he offers for Vader to use his barge to get them there so that they don't run when an Imperial shuttle arrives. Vader agrees, and they travel to the last location of the separated group. When they land, Vader and Ochi get out and immediately start killing all the droids and soldiers nearby. And as they fight, the bounty hunter IG-88 joins the fray, helping the camp. And Vader tells IG to surrender, and he says no. That the only info that you need and can get, you have to retrieve from my severed head. Vader charges, deflecting blaster bolts, and chops IG's gun in half. But as he goes in for another strike, IG hits a button on his arm, and Vader's suit gets frozen in place. And Vader asks him who gave him his armor codes, and IG refuses to tell. And at this point, Vader, fighting to keep control, uses the Force to hit the button again and free himself, and uses the Force yet again to make IG raise his own gun to his head and blast himself. Boku sees this and activates an orbital strike on the base, killing all the remaining soldiers. And Vader and Ochi go into one of the buildings and start searching through the data on the terminals, discovering about Crimson Dawn. And they leave and they go back to Boku's barge. And Vader tells Boku that if he tries to betray him again with an orbital strike or any other means, he will die. And they get in the ship and they leave. And at this point, we switch over to Coruscant. And we see IG walking up, having repaired himself, and he's approaching his employers. And we learn that they gave him Vader's armor codes and told him to try to kill Vader. And we switch over and we see his employers. And we don't know who they are, but they are 5 robed figures that say that together they can be more powerful than ever and take down the Emperor. And that ends our issue. Taking us to our final issue, Dr. Aphra number 11, written by Alyssa Wong, with art by Minaku Jung, and colors by Rochelle Rosenberg. Chapter 1, Part 6, The Wreckage. Rogue archaeologist Dr. Aphra and smuggler Sanastaros are working for Domina Teague. The job? Locate Domina's criminal cousin, who disappeared after alluding to an incredible opportunity for the Teague Corporation. Meanwhile, Just Lucky and Ariel Yu's old mentor has betrayed the Six Kin Syndicate, and they've been tasked with infiltrating an exclusive event to eliminate him. Loyalty is in short supply with the Tag Corporation and the Six Kin. Is Domina's credible opportunity and the exclusive event one and the same? Now, we open on the ship the Opal Empress, and we see Aphra and Sana board the ship and find that everyone on it is dead. And they start searching the ship, trying to find Eben Drake, Domina's cousin. And they're searching along, and they find him in a room dead with a hollow card in his hand and a hole in his head. And Aphra takes the card, and she learns that it's an invitation to the Crimson Dawn party. And as they've been overlooking at this invitation, behind them, someone tells them to stand aside, that this is his bounty. And they turn to see a massive armored bounty hunter named Dirge. He looks into the room, and he immediately points his blaster towards them, saying that he needed Eben Drake alive. And Aphra tells him that they didn't kill him or anyone else on this ship. And moments later, there is a screech that comes from an air vent next to him, and a swarm of purple spiked slug creatures pour out and start attacking them. The 3 of them run to a nearby room, fighting through the swarm and sealing the door behind them. And we learn from Aphra that the slugs are called cymotes, and that they lay eggs in living hosts, and they eat the way back out. And Dirge says he will help to kill them, and that he will lure the Cymox into the airlock. And after their plan's set, he bursts through the door, shooting and drawing all the Cymotes to him as he runs down the hall, followed by Aphra and Sana. And he runs into the airlock, but before he can get back out, Aphra seals him in with the Cymotes and opens the airlock, sending them all into space. And all the Cymotes start bursting under the atmospheric pressure, and Dirge himself starts to freeze over and float off into the nowhere. Now, at this point, we switch over to Domina Tag's ship. And Aphra calls and tells Domina about Eben's death and about Crimson Dawn's invitation. Domina tells them to go to the party and learn everything they can about all the syndicates and where Han Solo's body is. And that ends our issue. I hope everyone enjoyed the story this week. And join us next week where we cover X-Men Legends 1 through 4. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Feedback is always welcome. You can also find us on the Jabroni Nerd Network Facebook page and at Jabroni Network on Twitter. So until next week, guys, stay sweaty and keep talking nerdy.